So whites don't like to talk about other groups having astronomical violent crime rates. It's considered vulgar and distasteful. And so you get shows like Law and Order, and they focus on the very rare white criminal. So, for example, 98% of gun crime in New York City is caused by members of one minority group. Now, whites don't like to talk about that. So if you're going to do a TV show, you're going to talk about the one white guy that does something like that, because it's a perverse form of self-esteem, that they hold themselves to so much higher moral standards than they hold other groups, that they have no interest in critiquing other groups. That's considered vulgar. They don't really compete with other groups because they don't consider many of these other groups even worthy of competing against. They look at other groups and either regard them as boring drones or low IQ, violently inclined, welfare-addicted losers. So they really only want to compete with fellow whites. And so the way they do that is by demonstrating how virtuous they are. So if they were religious, they would do it by demonstrating how saved they are. So the whole reason, for example, that Protestants don't swear is that if you swear when you stub your toe, it shows that you don't really connect with Jesus. You haven't really welcomed Jesus into your heart, that you're not truly saved. And so that's why Protestants historically exemplified this really high social trust, high citizenship qualities, just very, 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 very nice people. If you know traditional Protestant people, they tend to be very, very nice, very self-controlled. So that's how they would show their virtue. That's how they would show that they were saved. Now that this has been secularized, they have to find new ways of placing themselves above other whites in a status hierarchy. They're not really interested in competing with outgroups that they regard as either boring or low IQ or stupid or criminally inclined. They only want to compete with fellow whites, and they do this by trying to show how virtuous they are. And so virtue has come through some warped development to show that how opposed to any form of discrimination you are, whether in racial matters or sex matters or sexual preference matters, age, looks, whatever. It's this crazy virtue signaling. It's a little bit how the news media will focus on, say, one bad thing that Israel does, which is, say, 1/1000th as bad as something going on in an Arab or African country. But the news media isn't particularly interested in talking about bad things going on in African or Arab countries because that's boring. Like, that's what the news media expects. They expect people in Africa and in Arab countries to behave barbaric. And so when a Jew participates in some low form of behavior, then it's newsworthy, and it's not really anti-Semitism. It's kind of the opposite of that. They expect Jews to behave better. They expect whites to behave better. And so it creates this perverse inversion of values.
The rate of intermarriage hasn't really gone up tremendously. Especially in the most visible kind and the most visible sort imaginable. So it really, I think this is really just companies trying to out PC each other. Luke, being Australian, I'm sure you heard about what happened with KFC there in what was it, last year? There was, I find it bizarre, first and foremost, that there's Kentucky Fried Chicken like in New South Wales. I can't wrap my head around that, but there is. And there was an ad at I think a soccer event, or they would call it football, and this guy who's trying to make friends, so to speak, with this girl is completely cut off by this other fellow who is not white, and it creates, that's the punchline of the ad. It's funny, it's at the white guy's expense. Isn't this great? Come by KFC. And that sort of thing, I think, is the epitome of what white Southern God is referring to here. And it's very easy to create white positive imagery. All you have to do in a grassroots sense is, I guess, try to come up with a product that people like, know what your market is. Chances are it appeals to whites. It'll appeal to East Asians as well, and probably quite a few subcontinental Indians. And then you just create ads featuring each group in a very positive sense, and that's your marketing. Or if you want to do like a web series, you could do a show about people who happen to be white and not portray them in the way which the media often does. It's not, it's not brain surgery. And the good thing is that now people can do it even with stuff like community guidelines. If you just do a positive portrayal That's not, a strikeable offense. The problem comes when you start inciting against other groups. Although certain platforms, including this one, have a very broad definition of what that means. I think even going beyond what they say it means, but whatever. So I think that if you're going to look at Madison Avenue to do this, it's not going to happen. But people can do it on a smaller level, and if it goes viral, it could have a great influence over society, even if only in a subliminal sense. It's still a great influence. Yeah, that's pretty much my perspective here. I will just say that the companies that make this stuff up, same thing with like the Gillette ad, the notorious one, I think of 2018, late 2018 or early 2019. Uh, that stuff is done to appeal to SJW millennials, maybe a few Gen Xers, some Gen Zers, but mainly SJW millennials. And this stuff is done by whites for other whites, interestingly, even if the whites who are doing this are not in the kind of relationships that they depict. And even if the customers they're trying to reach are not in these relationships, it's just about making a social statement and trying to cash in off of that.